Hi, I'm Allegra of Beyond Your Wildest Dreams, and I'm here today to talk about all the things having to do with helping you prioritize yourself and your goals so that you can live a life beyond your wildest dreams. And if you are watching me live, feel free to comment. I do see them. And if you want to listen to this again, you can always listen to it as the Harness the Power of Planning podcast, wherever you get your podcasts. This will be episode 105. Oh my gosh, so amazing. When I started this many years ago, I think it's been 6 or 7 years, I never really envisioned getting to episode 100 and beyond, and that's probably part of why it took so long, because as soon as I said, "I'm gonna get to episode 100 and keep doing it," it happened so fast. And, that's all about focus, which is part of what we're talking about today. Today, I'm going to talk about mindset issues, which is not something that I talk about a lot because I don't think it's my personal it's the thing that I know the most about, if you will. However, I have seen the benefits of working on mindset. And so if you're someone who has said, I know what I should be doing, but I seem to have this mental block against doing the thing, then you're probably dealing with a mindset issue. Mhm. And I am personally studying a mindset book right now. And so I've been talking with friends about what I've been learning, and I wanted to share that as I always do. I just love sharing anything that can make your life better. And so before I get into mindset, and by talking about mindset, I'm actually going to be talking about two lies that I feel like hear a lot or have personally experienced in Western society. And that is, who do you think you are? As in, and sometimes it's people saying it to you, and sometimes it's you saying it to yourself. Like, who do I think I am to think I can have this thing or accomplish this goal? That's a form of a mindset issue, a limiting belief. And then the other one is, well, the only way to become great at anything is to focus on just that one thing. So those are the two mindset issues slash limiting beliefs that I'm going to talk about today, my own experience with them. And also I'm going to talk about two books that I think are amazing in helping you overcome mindset issues. They've helped me so much. And so that's what I want to share with you today. But as always, first things first, pulling a quote from my little handy dandy thing of quotes. How we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Oh my goodness. Yes, that's definitely one of the challenges I find with being a planner is that, when you're planning, I like to think in terms of a year because a year is a sort of something that you can wrap your head around in terms of life. You can plan out a year, but really we live day by day. And that is why having activities that you do every day, such as taking your supplements, drinking your water, working on fascia release. I'm doing a lot of fascia release. I love fascia release. It's something I've been obsessed with for the last 2 years. I didn't know anything about it until about 2 years ago, and now it's one of I find the most valuable things I can do to make my body feel good, to make uh I don't wanna say muscles to make my muscles feel good, but I guess that's how we always think about it. Whenever we think about things being tight, we think about it being muscles. But what I've learned over the last 2 years is really it's probably if you're feeling chronic tightness, it's probably fascia because fascia is so much stronger than muscle. I heard one statistic that it's 20 times stronger than muscle, that it can get tight and then it can be really hard to release, which is why I work on it every day. And about 20 years ago, I was actually bedridden with a back injury that was diagnosed as a herniated disc at the L5S1 junction. However, knowing what I know now, I now realize that maybe I had a little bit of a herniated disc and that was, not a good thing, but that was more the symptom. The problem was really, really tight fascia that was pulling me into these in this constricted position. And the reason why I know now that it was fascia is because if I would do this walk, this loop around my neighborhood that takes me 26 minutes today, but it took me 3 hours back then. But when I would start the walk, I would literally be in this like hunched over position, and by the end of the 3-hour walk, I could straighten up a little bit more. And what I know about fascia releases, it's all about getting your muscles really, your fascia, getting the connective tissue, all the stuff in between the muscles really, really warm so that it can lengthen and release. And so, fascia, love fascia. I actually have a whole series of videos. If you're interested in fascia, I'm just going to type it into it's tinyurl.com. Hold on. This is not what I was planning on talking about, but I think it's so important that I want to share it with everyone. tinyurl.com/videos. Check it out. You'll learn so much about your body and pain and muscles and fascia. And let me put that into here. Tiny url.com/fascia videos. Check those out. They have been a game changer for me. And so the quote today was, how we spend our days is, of course, how we spend our lives. Well, I want to spend my life being physically fit, being mobile, being able to live independently, carry my groceries. If I have grandchildren, being able to pick up my grandchildren. I want to be able to do all those things. And in order to do them, you got to do a little bit every day. So thank you for that quote, Annie Dillard. Okay, so as I mentioned at the top of the show, what I'm going to talk about today are mindset issues, which is not my expertise. However, I feel like sometimes I meet people who say, I know what I know all about planning. I know I should do planning, but I'm having difficulty getting started. I'm having this mental block from getting started. And if you have a mental block, then that's a mindset issue. And so mindset, originally I was thinking about calling this episode pre-planning because mindset issues can keep you in park forever. They can be debilitating. They can make you feel like you're afraid to do anything. They can also make you feel like you don't deserve to do anything. And that's really what I'm going to talk about today. I'm not going to talk about fear or anxiety. I'm going to talk about this lack of self-worth because I think it's one that it can be nefarious in how subtle it is. And also, I feel like it's one of the more pervasive ones because the way it shows up sometimes, it shows up as something that seems like quote unquote common sense. So, what I want to say is that what began this conversation, what created the idea for having this podcast today was a conversation I was having with a friend where I was talking about how I have my business, but I also pursue stand-up comedy, and I don't pursue it just going to open mics. I actually compete in contests, I do shows, I even produced my own show for the first time this year. I'm gonna produce it a couple more times this year. So I am more serious about it than the average bear. And I know that I've often had this sort of people have said to me, you would be more quote unquote successful in what you do if you focused on one thing. And so it's kind of these are two topics, right? This focusing on one thing. I'm not sure. Usually I split up the podcast into two parts. I don't know if I'm going to be able to do that cleanly today because I feel like these two things vibe off of each other. And so I might just be going back and forth. So this whole idea of doing more than one thing and this limiting belief of, well, who do you think you are to think that you can do that? Right? Like most of us, I feel like the limiting belief is, well, most of us are struggling out here to even do one thing. Why do you think that you can run a successful business and also pursue stand-up comedy at any sort of high level. And I know this is something that, I've struggled with, and so let me just, throw up the 2 books that have mentioned that I said really helped me out. One of them is called Existential Kink, and Existential Kink, I feel like, is the most intuitive of the mindset books I've ever read. So, if you've read any self-help book that is asking you to sort of plumb the challenges you face in your life and why maybe you keep facing them, sometimes the way that they want you to approach that is very logical. Actually, every book I've ever read about it wants to approach it from a very logical point of view. Existential Kink approaches it from a more creative, more intuitive point of view. And one of my main takeaway from Existential Kink is this idea that if it's showing up in your life continuously, she's not talking about one-time thing. One-time things are one-time things, but if you keep meeting the same sort of people, if you keep putting yourself in the same sort of relationships, if you keep finding yourself under a certain type of boss, that repetitiveness of that experience, there's probably something there that you actually are searching out in some way. Not that you desire the thing or enjoy the thing, but that you're getting something out of it, and sometimes that thing is negative. And why are you doing that thing? And this book really helped me overcome some beliefs that I had regarding relationships of mine and learning to be able to forgive and accept and move on. This book is what really helped me do that. The other mindset book that I find to be really helpful is called The Big Leap. And The Big Leap talks about self-sabotage, but it talks about self-sabotage in a way that I had never heard before because, we've all seen self-sabotage play out either in our own friends and family, or maybe we've seen them, kind of out there in the public life. Like, I think one that you see a lot of self-sabotage is these lottery winners who lose the money really quickly. And I think you see self-sabotage among famous people all of the time. And the way he describes self-sabotage that was different for me is that he says when you're a kid, you kind of develop this set happiness level, this ceiling of happiness, and you come to believe it. And again, maybe this isn't a belief that you have consciously, but somehow unconsciously you come to believe that you only deserve a certain amount of happiness. And because you believe that you only deserve that certain amount of happiness, the minute you approach or broach that happiness ceiling, you do something negative to bring you back down. And some people do this really obviously. He shares some really interesting examples in the book of people who literally make the most money they've ever made, and then they go out and they pick a fight with their spouse. And he calls that hitting your upper limit. And when you do that kind of self-sabotaging behavior, you are upper limiting yourself. And it was interesting because he talks about his 4 most common upper limit issues that he sees. And the one that he said most often afflicts eldest children, of which I am an eldest child. He says that eldest children most often have this upper limit belief around don't shine too bright. And he says that what happens is that the oldest child, because they're the ones who are talking, because they're the ones who can move around and, want to get people's attention, that when another sibling comes along, the first child is out there, like, talking, 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 taking all the attention, and they will get the message either directly or indirectly from their parents, like, "Hey, save some attention for your sibling." And that they then internalize this idea that, "Oh, I can't shine too bright. I'm being too loud. I'm being too me," even, maybe is the thought. And when I first heard his description of this upper limit problem, the self-sabotaging problem, it didn't resonate with me completely. However, after thinking about it longer, I thought, okay, I definitely feel like I have experienced this sort of problem, but in a slightly different way, which is this who do you think you are upper limit problem. Okay, so I would say that my version of this problem looks more like who do you think you are, which is that I don't know that I don't know that my family specifically tried to get me to dim my light, if you will. However, I do feel like society has this, and especially women, we have this limiting belief, which is there are only so many things that women can do. And granted, this list of things has grown over time. In the past, it used to be very narrow, but there's sort of these approved things that are fine for women to pursue. However, even though this list has opened up, even though now we have women, running for president, running major corporations, even though we have those things now, it's not like it's widely accepted or expected to see a woman in these positions of power. And I think that I know that I've seen women of my generation, so I'm a Gen Xer and baby boomers, so the generations older than me. I know I've seen women who, when they see a Kamala Harris or a Hillary Clinton, they their knee-jerk reaction is, "Well, who does she think she is to be running for president?" And I'm not talking about politics here at all. I'm just straight up talking about as the reaction to seeing a woman run for president. And, I mean, when you consider the things that those 2 women have done in terms of public service, their path has pretty much been leading them to running for president all this time. Like, anyone who has, served in Congress, served as a Secretary of State, served as a lawyer, district attorney, in that kinda level, like, they're probably heading towards that public service route, those higher levels of public service, right? Regardless of their gender, male or female, they are heading towards that route of the bigger public service jobs that are available in our country. And yet, you never hear anyone look at a man, even a man who might not have been as qualified as other people who tend to run for highest office. There's never a moment where someone says, "Well, who do they think they are?" So, I believe that this kind of knee-jerk reaction around this idea of who do you think you are is really just tied back to the fact that women have not been able to have these really public positions for a long time. And so the generations who were raised seeing less of that, there's some jealousy there. I believe there's some jealousy there when a woman is seeing another woman do something that she doesn't feel like she had the opportunity to do herself. Okay? And the women that I've seen express this opinion, like, who does she think she is? They could have done the things that these other women that they are feeling jealous of did. They just didn't choose to. And I do think that sometimes they didn't choose to because they didn't believe that they could do it. And they are expressing their own insecurity onto someone who is doing the thing. And I believe that that's my form of this limiting belief. I believe that I internalize this, "Who do you think you are? Who do you think you are that you could have?" I've been an entrepreneur now for 19 years. Who do you think you are that you can have a business and pursue stand-up comedy? Who do you think you are that you can do that? And be a good mom? Who do you think you are that you can do that? Well, you know what? There are people who don't have this limiting belief. There are people that you might know them in your personal life. The easiest people to point out to, of course, are famous people because we all see them. But there are people who do multiple things, who are designers and comedians. And I mean, look at someone not even as famous as, say, an Ellen DeGeneres or Jennifer Lopez, who have all these different things. Like Tom Ford, very, very well-regarded designer, and he directed this amazing movie. I actually heard an interview the other day from this guy who is a very successful screenwriter, and then he left screenwriting to become a marriage and family therapist and has written multiple books, right? So we all have this these abilities to do more than one thing. And I'm kind of getting into topic number 2 on focus. So again, as I mentioned, I don't know if I'm gonna be able to chop these ones up like I usually do, but it wasn't too long ago, and in some small towns, it's still this way, that you had more than one occupation, right? You hear these jokes about like, well, I'm the sheriff and the butcher, or I'm the mayor and the volleyball coach. In fact, most most coaches are also teachers at schools. It is very normal for all of us to have multiple interests and multiple outlets. In fact, in addition to doing stand-up comedy, I also sing in a choral group. Now, I do all these things at different levels of intensity, okay? I have only 24 hours just like everyone else. I only have so much energy. So, I am I will agree that you can't necessarily push and pursue everything with the same level of energy and excitement. Yes, okay. I agree with that part of, focus on one thing. People are always saying, focus on one thing. That's how you become, quote unquote, really successful. Well, if you're like me, focusing on one thing makes you feel dead inside. I if I focus on just one thing, I am so bored. I need my other interests to keep me engaged in this thing called life. Like I am regularly listening to 2 to 3 books at a time, or sorry, reading 2 to 3 books at a time, and one of them is always nonfiction, and one of them is always fiction, and then the other one is who knows what, because I don't wanna just read one book all the way through. Sometimes I'm in the mood for fiction, sometimes I'm in the mood for nonfiction. I am incapable of doing one thing at a time in terms of the grand scheme of life. Now, look, if I really need to focus because I need to get something done, clearly I can focus because I've written 4 books. Now, when I set aside my 1 hour to do writing in my planner, you bet I am focused. I am working on writing. But again, in the grand scheme of things, I give a lot of time to Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. And then so let's say Beyond Your Wildest Dreams in terms of my non-personal goals. Okay, so personal stuff having to do with, family and relationships and health, okay? In terms of my non-personal goals, Beyond Your Wildest Dreams and my public speaking and corporate training that I do around it, that is my number 1 priority. My number 2 priority in terms of outward facing goals would be stand-up comedy. And I wouldn't even put it at 2. I might put it at, like, it's not like 1 and 2 are this close together. It's like Beyond Your Wildest Dreams is way up here and stand-up comedy is, well below it, but then way down here is my singing. Singing is something I enjoy because I enjoy the community of singing with a group of people, but it's more like a social thing. It's more like I'm just hanging out with women and we happen to be singing. That's how we're hanging out instead of bowling. Like if you're in a bowling league, that's what I would say where my level of singing is. Yes, I'm singing at Carnegie Hall in 10 days, just like your bowling league might go do a tournament, okay? I know it sounds impressive because of the venue, Carnegie Hall, but it's just a thing that choral groups do, if you will. It's not like I am headlining Carnegie Hall, my name in the lights or anything like that. Like I'm singing as part of a choral group ensemble, super fun, but my priorities are very clear. Now, I love the other thing about stand-up comedy and choral singing is that they provide me with breaks from working on Beyond Your Wildest Dreams because I'm the sort of person who can just really I can burn out creatively. If all I were doing was writing productivity and time management books, I wouldn't keep doing it for very long because I need to cleanse my palate and take a break. But also too, I often have epiphanies about time management and productivity and goal setting when I'm doing the stand-up comedy and the choral singing. So they actually inform my number 1 priority in a way. So, kind of related to this whole who do you think you are limiting belief is this other limiting belief that I think a lot of us have internalized, which is that the only way to be successful in something is if you focus on it 100%. And I can't even tell you how many times someone has said something like that to me. They said like, "Well, if you weren't spending your energy doing stand-up comedy or singing with the choral group and going to Carnegie Hall in New York, you would be a lot further along with Beyond Your Wildest Dreams and that business." And to that I say, maybe I would be. Maybe I would be. But I don't think I'd be as happy. And that's really my guiding light. If my compass in life was monetary reward, then I'd say, yeah, I'm off track because you're right. I probably could be making more. I could be speaking more and traveling more and, just really with regards to my business. I could be doing more of that if my compass were monetary reward. However, my compass, the thing that I guide my life by is joy. I want to feel joy in this life. And I love my business Beyond Your Wildest Dreams. I love doing this podcast. I love doing my corporate training. I love it. And I also love doing stand-up comedy. And I also love this community of choral singers that I get to vibe with once a week. And so, according to my internal compass of joy, I am on track. I'm killing it. I'm doing a good job. And so, if you've ever had someone say this to you, like, who do you think you are for thinking you can do all these things? Who do you think you are for thinking that you deserve to do all these things? I would say to you, don't internalize those messages because the people who are saying those things, they are either just repeating something that they have heard so many times over and over again that they believe it, even though they've never maybe like examined it and looked at it and said, is this actually true? I don't know. Or they might be feeling jealous, and the jealousy might not be something that they are conscious of. They might just have this knee jerk, like, oh, well, I don't think I can do that. So why do they think they can do that? And so I'm so grateful for these 2 books. Again, the first one is Existential Kink by Carolyn Elliott. The second one is The Big Leap by Gay Hendricks. I will put links in them in the show notes. I'm so thankful for these books for helping me because the thing was I was always going to keep pursuing these things because I know about myself that if I just focus on one thing, that's what gets me to burnout. That's what leaves me creatively dry. And so I was always going to do multiple things. But now, because of these books, now I do them with a sense of optimism and a sense of, I can do this that I didn't have before. Before I felt like, well, if everyone's saying that it's not the best way to go about things and they're probably right, but I don't see any other way to do it. Now what I think is, no, this is the right way to do things for me. And I can do all of them and do them all well because that is, all things are possible. And when you're on the right path, all you have to do is keep walking. And according to my compass of joy, I am right where I'm supposed to be. I feel good about it. Therefore, if I'm happy about it, what else is there? So if you are into adjusting your mindset, or if you have any book or recommendations, throw them my way. I'm always looking for new ones. I am a lifelong learner. I know I can always learn something. And because you're listening to this podcast, I know you're in that same boat. So keep moving forward. Keep looking for that solution that you need to take your life to the next level. And hopefully these books have helped you. Hopefully this conversation has helped you in some way to think about, maybe the reason I'm not starting the thing isn't because I don't have the tools or because I don't know what the steps are. Maybe it's because I'm holding myself back because of a mindset issue. And if so, check out these books. They have great tools. And when you are ready to get started on that dream that you've been working on, then hey, check out my website, bywdreams.com. We have our recorded course, Harness the Power of Planning, that is available to you at tinyurl.com/HPOP on demand. And it will be ready for you as soon as you are ready for it. But as I mentioned at the top of the show, I thought about calling this podcast pre-planning because before you can start planning, you need to be ready mentally to take on that challenge. And so that's where these 2 books, Existential Kink and The Big Leap can help you. They can help you overcome any sort of mindset block you're having so that you can pursue a life beyond your wildest dreams. Thanks for joining me. And remember, planning makes everything easier.